think you can see me though. Okay, it's hard to miss me. Okay, we're going to take the mystery out of half-square triangles. Okay, I'm going to try to be as quick as I can so that you can get home before midnight. Okay, how many of us love making half-square triangles? Okay, how many of us hate making half-square triangles? Same people. How many of us are good at making half-square triangles? Cool. How many are not so good at making half-square triangles? Okay. Okay, so it's obvious that there are many, many quilt patterns that use half-square triangles, or HSTs as we're abbreviating them. So it's important that if we're going to make them, that we make them consistently and accurately as we possibly can. Okay, so insider's tip number 1. It takes practice. Okay, don't beat yourself up if you're just starting. Okay, if you've been quilting for a while and you still have trouble, you might want to pay attention because I have a few other tips for you. Tip number 2, cutting accuracy counts. Okay, so if you have a pattern, I'm looking at 2 different sets of papers here trying to figure out what I'm doing. Okay, if the instructions say to cut it 2 7/8 inch square, do you cut it at 3 inches?
No. Yeah.
Some? Okay, some do. Okay, it's not a right or wrong. I mean, actually kind of is, but. Okay, if you do cut it at 3 inches, then you're going to have to square off every single unit. Okay, that means switch it around. Okay, 4 cuts for every unit. And you have 478 units to make. How long is that going to take?
Forever.
Right. Okay. So the lesson to be learned there is squaring off takes time. And squaring off also has to be accurate. Okay? Because if you're not accurate when you're squaring it off, it's still not going to fit together. Okay? Sorry to bring the bad news to you, you know. Okay. So then insider's tip number 3, sewing accuracy counts. Okay? So, do you know how to do the 1/4 inch test? Okay. What you do is you take 3 1.5 inch wide strips by 6 inches, whatever length. Sew them together with your best 1/4 inch seam. Hopefully. Yep, it's 1/4 inch. Okay. And then you press your seams towards your darker fabric. Okay. And then you take your little ruler, a 1 inch wide omnigrid ruler is perfect for this. And if it fits inside there, it should kind of almost just snap right inside there. That's, your 1/4 inches are perfect. Okay? If you have more space next to the ruler, then your seams are too narrow. If you have less space, then your seams are too wide. Okay? So that's how you can accurately tell. Now, a lot of times what I do if I'm getting somebody set up for a workshop at Dollards or something like that, is I'll take them over to the machine and take my little ruler that has 1/4 inch markings on it and lift up my presser foot a little bit. I'm going to line up the 1/4 inch line on the ruler with the 1/4 inch there. Lower my needle, and can you get the angle right here? Okay, so if the edge of the presser foot is right along that 1/4 inch line, then that's your 1/4 inch. Okay. A lot of machines you can move. Hello. you can move your needle back and forth. With a standard zigzag machine, a lot of times you have separate knobs for your length and your width, okay? Length is for the distance between the stitches. The width is how wide the stitches are, okay? But a lot of times you can adjust the width knob to move your needle, even if you're doing a straight stitch. Okay? So not all machines can do that, but many of them can, and a lot of people don't know that. Okay? So it is possible to adjust it. Another thing, gizmo that you could buy is your 1/4-inch presser foot. Okay, so some of them have the little flange on the side, and then some of them don't have the flange. Personally, I prefer the ones that don't have the flange, because the flange sometimes gets in the way when I'm trying to sew stuff. And then there's also stuff like this. This is little foot. This is a little clear one. This is made specifically for a Singer featherweight to use with that. Okay. And most of them also have markings across the foot too, so that your needle is at this one mark here in the center, and there's another mark that's a 1/4 inch away from that. So if you need to pivot at a corner, you can sew until you get to where the fabric is right at that mark, and then pivot. Okay, so you'll have a good 1/4 inch corner on there too. Okay, so a lot of them have, markings that you may not even notice, but they're there. Okay, I'm throwing things away around here. Okay, so we got that. All right, newsflash. If you're not pressing well, it will affect the size of your half square triangle. Okay, pressing is important. Okay, so I pre-sewed this big half square triangle, and I was showing Nancy, and actually just as an insider tip, my new mystery quilt is going to use a lot of these big half square triangles. And I just penciled it in on the calendar for Monday, December 27th, here at the church. I may be excommunicated, but it's on the calendar. Okay, so anyway, and I also have a sign-up sheet and supply list too, so, okay, anyway. But I don't want to distract you. Okay, so anyway, I sewed this already, okay, but when I was pinning it, I was showing Nancy and Ronnie, I think. Was I showing both of you?
Why not?
That when I was pinning this, I would start sewing up here. So I put one pin there, and one pin across the end. Okay, so that when I sewed it, I always sew on the left-hand side first, sewing down this way. This pin keeps the points together, because you know how they like to shift. For one thing, you're sewing on the bias, okay? So they like to shift. So what I do is I sew down the left side, lift up my presser foot, spin it around, and then sew back on the other side, okay? And by leaving 2 out of the 3 pins in there, you know that everything is going to stay where you want it to stay. And this is really good with big triangles, especially. Little ones, probably wouldn't want to bother with so much. Okay, so once you have it sewn, sometimes it has a little wobble to it. So you want to press it. So I press along the seams and then out to the sides to square it up, make it nice and even. And then use my ruler and my cutter to cut it apart. Okay. Now, when your instructions tell you to press your seams towards your darker fabric, okay, here's the little trick that I use. If it says to press towards the darker fabric, I put the darker fabric on top, and then open it like a book, and then the seam allowance will automatically go towards the darker fabric. Okay. And then I finger press. Finger pressing is important because pleats are for pleated skirts and not for quilts. Okay. And then I kind of sweep my iron in the direction of the darker fabric so that, again, there are no pleats. Okay, because pleats do affect the size of your units that you end up with. Okay. All right, so that's pressing demo. Let's see. Okay. Also, when you're drawing your line on the wrong side of your fabric, when you have your light and your dark, okay, do you think it makes a difference if the line is straight from corner to corner? Okay. Okay. So if I'm kind of not paying attention and I draw my line like that, is that going to be good half-square triangles?
No.
No. Okay. So, okay, now, how about if I have my ruler lined up, but I lean my pencil way out there? Is that going to be accurate?
No.
No. But I see a lot of people do that. When you're drawing your line, you want to make sure that that pencil is right next to your ruler. Okay? Kind of running right along the edge of it. Because otherwise, it's not going to come out right. Okay. Another thing that I do a lot of times is I'll line up the point of my pen or my pencil at one corner, slide the ruler over to the pencil, and then go down to the other end, slide the ruler over to match up the pencil, check one more time here to make sure it hasn't wiggled, and then draw the line. Okay. And then make sure that your pencil is right next to that line. And a lot of times, if I'm using a regular pencil, I'll kind of sweep it like down and up instead of going like a big heavy drawing thing. So kind of sweeping it down, sweeping it back up again, and that's going to give you your best line. Okay, but again, I do see people do that all the time, and then they wonder why they don't get good triangles. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so then squaring off. Okay, you can either square off. Okay. Most of the time when I square off, I try to use a square ruler with a diagonal line on it. Okay. And what I want to do is not burn myself, so let's move this over here. Okay. What we want to do is we want to line up the diagonal line with the seam that's on the unit that you just made. And I'm intentionally not really lining this up on the mat exactly. I don't use the mat too much as far as measuring goes. Okay, but you want that diagonal line to be right along that seam before you trim. Okay? And then after you trim those two sides, spin it around, make sure the diagonal line again is on the same seam. And this time you actually measure from your outside edges to where you want to trim it to the right size. Okay? So that's the diagonal line is your friend. Okay. Square triangle. Okay. Now another way to square off is using a special ruler. Okay. Of course, there are many rulers that consider themselves special. Okay. So there's all kinds of stuff. There's some that are made for on the diagonal, some are on the square, some have lines up and down, some of them have, this is like a square off ruler. This is an easy angle. There are tons of rulers that you can spend your money on, but the results are still going to be the same if your seam is not accurate, your cutting's not accurate, and your pressing's not accurate. Okay? So those are the main three things that you want to keep in mind. Okay. Now there is another ruler that some of us have discovered recently, and it's called the Clearly Perfect Slotted Trimmers. Okay. And these are made so that after you make your half square triangle units, you've sewn them, but you haven't pressed it open yet. Okay. Then you take your little ruler and line it up on top of your triangle. Okay. I don't know if you can see this. Can you zoom in here?
Yep.
Okay. So right now, if I line up this dashed line with my seam allowance, it's showing that I should end up with a 5-inch finished square. Okay, so I would trim off these two edges, but the difference with this ruler is that it also has these slots at each end.
Perfect, yeah.
Where you can trim off your dog ears before you press.
And you have to have dogs on there.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't plan it that way, sorry. Oh, that's good. Love it. Okay, so finger press and then sweep the iron to get those little pleats out of there. Okay, so that's this ruler. So they have these in a couple different sizes. One of them is made for squaring off blocks that finish at 1/2 inch, like 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and the other one is for even numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, they sell them separately, but they also have them as a package deal too. So,
Are they $1?
no, but I can get them.
All right.
But I didn't want to pre-order them because I didn't know how many people might
Yep.
want them. And some people, Miss Jane already has them. So,
They are nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I think they're good.
yeah. So you can square off the outside edges and get rid of the dog ears at the same time. Okay. Okay, where am I? And let's see. Oh, okay, so cutting to the right size, cut it at, 4 7/8. Do your accurate 1/4 inch down and back, cut it apart, press it, trim your dog ears, and you're done. Okay, so no going back and squaring off and things like that. So if you do a nice accurate job from the very beginning, step by step, you don't have to do all the squaring off stuff because that's a waste of time. And we'd rather be doing better things, like more sewing instead of squaring. Okay. Okay, so then the next one is using a commercial product. Commercial products such as triangles on a roll. They've been out for many, many years, come in all different sizes. This particular one still has a calico and cotton sticker on it. And it's one roll, the whole roll was enough to make 1,200 1-inch half square triangle units. Okay, which I'm not into self-torture, so sorry about that. Okay, so what you do is it tells you how wide to cut your strips for the particular size that you're working with. In this case, I think it's 6 7/8 or something like that. No, it says it right on the thing. Cut fabric 7 3/4 inches wide by length to obtain the desired number of blocks. Okay, so this is how wide the paper is. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 squares across, which means there's 2, 4, 6, 8 triangles in each row. Okay, so it goes pretty fast. They even have little arrows that guide you as far as which way you're supposed to be sewing as you go along. And you can, it does have a tiny margin out here, so you can kind of sew your way from one spot to the next as you're going around there, so you don't have to keep lifting up and stopping and starting and things like that. So on the back, it kind of looks like a little grid. I don't know if you can see that. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. Okay. And then when you're ready to cut it apart, you trim your outside edges. And again, if you are kind of a stickler for accuracy. You might want to measure, because it's 1 7/8 from the outside edge to this line. So you're going to trim away your outside edges. And I'm watching for the 1 7/8 line on the ruler. Okay. And then you cut on the solid lines. Including there. Okay. And you end up with all these little bitty half square triangles. Okay. The paper is nice and lightweight, so it does rip away pretty easily. Okay, a lot of times what I do is I bend it back to put a little crease in it, and then just rip it off. Okay. Right, and so this is another step that is time consuming to a certain extent, but in the past when I've made these in quantities, what I do is I do all the cutting and put them in like a roaster pan and sit in front of the TV and pick paper. So it doesn't take that long to do that especially if you're doing it during the commercials. Okay, so again, finger press back, press, and then trim off your little dog ears, and you're good to go. Okay, so I'll pass this around. Fling it over to... I need to practice my Eleanor Burns techniques, I guess.
Right here. We'll get it later.
Okay, so there's that. Do you want to
Like that?
see the tube thing too? Might be helpful to somebody. And we do have some of those at Dollars in some sizes. Okay, another commercial product is Thangles, which is similar. I stapled it all together here. Okay. All right. Okay, so with these, what you do, they have the paper is pre-cut into strips. Okay. And basically what you do is you buy the package that makes the size that you want. Like in this case, it's 1 1/4 inch half square triangles. Okay. So when you cut your strips, you add your 1/2 inch to that. So when you cut your strips, the strips are going to be 1 3/4 by whatever the length of the paper is. Okay. So, light and dark, right sides together. With this one, you just sew on the diagonal lines. You can kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they have a little tiny margin at the top, a little tiny margin at the bottom, but there's no room for error on the sides. Okay. But again, you cut on the solid lines. Okay, don't forget the end of it, because that's important too. But the way that they have these set up is so that you only end up with 1 dog ear. When you open it up. Okay, so a little less clipping to have to do. Okay, so that's Thangles.
One easier than the other?
I always I started out with triangles on a roll, and to me it has a lot more flexibility because you can make large quantities at a time. With these you can only make 2, 4, 6, 8 at a time. Okay. Okay, so there's that. Okay, let's see. One thing that I think I missed too was showing you how to chain piece half square triangles that are marked already. This is how I chain piece stuff. These guys. Okay, so I have 2 sets of half square triangles lined up. I got my line diagonally on there. Okay, I got my machine set for 1/4 inch. I start sewing on the left-hand side. If my pin is in the way. pin goes away. Okay, so I get to the end of the first side. I raise the presser foot, pull a little extra thread out, put the presser foot back down, and sew back down on the other side. And the machine is bouncing around on the table here. Okay, so then I'm at the end of that first set, so I raise my presser foot, line it up with a 1/4 inch for the next unit. Go down to the end, raise the presser foot, pull a little bit of thread out so I have a little bit of leeway there. Presser foot down. Sew to the other end, and then snip the first one off. Okay, so I don't end up with a big long string. You could technically do chain piecing by sewing all the pieces on the one side and then going back and sewing them all on the other side, but you end up with this big, huge, long string of stuff. Okay, so with this method, you're separating, pulling out one unit at a time as you go through. Okay, and then there's what I call the wrong way. Okay. Okay. This is a method that has become more popular through certain outlets online and otherwise, where you take your light and your dark fabric, put them right sides together, and you sew a 1/4 inch all the way around the outside edge. And then you cut an X. Simple. Okay?
Except they don't come out the right size.
Except that they come out on the bias. All the outside edges, so I tape this together too, are on the bias. And what happens with bias? Bias stretches. Okay? So then you end up with units like that. And then I'm going to call on Gail Tweed to share with us her experience with bias edges on the outside of a quilt block. Would you like to come up and share with us?
Oh.
She's like, oh. Gail came to me, when was it, last summer?
I guess it was
I think it was last summer. She said, Mary, I have a terrible problem. I have all these blocks and they're not fitting together.
Right. I fell in love with a quilt block that had some beautiful colors, and it was really vibrant, and it was a Missouri Star, and
You didn't hear it from me.
and as yeah, well, I'm kind of like between beginner and intermediate, and so this was well beyond my skill level, but I think we've all had learning experiences, so now I'm back to a 9 block, which is probably where I need to stay. But anyway, so what happened was, no, this isn't it. These are, I'm saving this to, these blocks I'm going to make charity quilts. But
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
that's a good one
Because
too.
that's two of them put together there.
So what happens is, as I'm trying to wiggle them all together, the bias starts to stretch. And of course, with my inexperience, I figure I'm going to stretch them to make them fit. And the more I stretch to make them fit, as I brought the other ones in to join together, then I wind up with more and more that are not going to go together. And the first thing, of course, Mary says to me is, they're on the bias. Yeah, and I'm like, well, I've made clothes. I've made a lot of clothes over the years. So I know what bias does, and this is exactly what happened. It it stretched, and I stretched to try to accommodate it and only made it worse. But I think there's one point at which, what was it, 12 points come together or something?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I
it
was never going to get that done. But it was a beautiful picture.
Oh, yeah.
And
It always looks good in the book, doesn't it? Yeah.
It looked gorgeous in the book. But I think this book's
There it is,
gonna
yeah.
have to go back on the
Somewhere in
shelf
it.
for a while.
Okay, and then the other part of that is, if you can manage to get your blocks to fit together, and you send it to somebody that has a long arm machine, and they try to load it on their long arm machine,
What happens
it
next?
continues to stretch. It keeps going bleep, 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 all in different directions, and it never comes out nice and square. It always has little waves and sometimes pleats and things
So
like that.
you didn't want me to come back?
I did not, no.
You didn't
I didn't want to be rude, but
You didn't
don't
want
bring it
to
in.
tell me, don't come back with whatever you think you finished, but a little sashing in between.
Yeah, the sashing seems to be a good idea. She
Yeah,
thought of
the,
that.
I
Because the
started-
sashing is on the straighter grain, so that'll kind of help to
Okay.
Well, I think that's
stabilize
what it
those
says in your
edges.
directions, so if
Yeah.
I start doing sashing in between,
Yeah,
and then I might be able to save the millions
That's
of
right.
dollars that I spent.
Lesson learned.
thank you, Gail.
Okay, it was humbling.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so lesson learned, okay? And fabric's not cheap anymore, too, so you don't want to waste it. Okay, now, and then other ways, if you want to go to YouTube, I put not a link, but a person's name to put in on YouTube, that she has 10 ways to make half square triangle blocks. And one of them is the accordion method, which I think Jane was trying to explain to us at one point. So she explains it pretty well. There are other people, actually the lady that came up with that idea, she has a YouTube video on how to do that. And with that method, what you can do is you can take a lot of different squares and end up with no two repeats. So like with most half square triangles, you end up with two identical squares, okay? But with the accordion method, you'll end up with one square that has this on it, and the next square would have this with something else on it, okay? So it's a good way to get the real scrappy look, if you like that look. And it seems to be pretty good. You just have to remember to always sew on the right side. Isn't that right, Jane? Do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah. She has different rules there, so you have to follow the rules. But it does work. Okay, now the basic formula for half square triangles is adding 7/8 of an inch to the finished size that you want to make. So if you're making a 2-inch finished square, you cut your squares to 2 7/8 inches, okay? Now, if you want to make quarter square